The palace of Emperor Toba was in turmoil. Recently, the Son of Heaven, who had been a healthy man, had fallen sick. All attempts from the court physicians were failing, and it was starting to look as though the man would not live out another week. Worse, there were whispers that the sickness was not natural, but some kind of supernatural curse. Now, Abe no Yasuchika, the emperor's chief astrologer, was a very clever man. While we call him an astrologer, the truth was he was actually more of a doctor, mixing 12th century Japanese science with what we would consider occultism in order to protect the capital from evil spirits, track the calendar, and predict the future. This was not an easy study and demanded years of dedication, so when he felt something unnatural was happening, he had some grounds for it. There were other signs as well. Everything started when Tamamo no Mai, known as the jewel of the emperor, had arrived in the court as a concubine. She had been clever, beautiful, and had showed an intelligence and understanding of state matters that had baffled most of the emperor's advisors. It was only natural that she would soon be irreplaceable to him. Yet, when asked about her life before, or even her family, Tamamo was evasive. Yasuchika had heard stories that bothered him. He knew that China had recently had a revolution, and the kingdom of Tanzu had whispered of a despotic prince who had tortured his subjects until his death. All of this started when a mysterious woman had appeared in the court. He had one true piece of evidence to his suspicions. On a windy night, while the emperor and his court had drank together in the summer palace, enjoying a feast, a storm rose, and a gust had managed to blow out every single candle. Yet it had not been dark. A strange light had filled the room, and it had shone from Tamamo's frame. Of course, the court had been quick to write off the events, claiming it was nothing but moonlight. But after that night, the emperor sickened, and no matter what remedies the doctors tried or what prayers the priests made, he would not rise. Tamamo no Mai, for her part, never left his side. Yasuchika knew that he could not give his accusations without evidence, so he decided on a plan. As an astrologer, he occupied a place between priest and doctor, so he set up a ritual, taking out his relic and placing a single mirror on the altar. After that, he called the court to offer prayers for the recovery of their emperor. The court agreed gladly, all except for Tamamo, who claimed that she could not bear to part with her beloved emperor and would offer up her prayers beside him. It was the very picture of a love-struck concubine. However, Yasuchika was insistent. After all, would not the prayers of one who loved the emperor so much be more pleasing to the gods during this ritual? Finally, the woman was forced to comply. She stepped forward, her head bowed in something like piety, only to look up to see the mirror on the altar where her face was clearly reflected for everyone else to see. It was the pure white muzzle of a fox. Tamamo was no fool. She knew when her masquerade was over, and as Yasuchika rushed forward to restrain her, the woman known as Tamamo changed. 9 tails fanned from her body, and white fur spread around her face and hands. Her face elongated into a muzzle, and her small, dainty hands curled into paws, until there was nothing left of her but the pure white fox, 9 tails, a mark of tremendous magical power, waving threateningly. The creature let out a cry that could almost have been said to sound like a woman's scream before vanishing through the palace into the night, never to be seen there again. The court was shocked and terrified, but they set up wards and sent out word about the white fox, both in anger at the demon that had so brazenly attacked the emperor and in hope that maybe, just maybe, they'd be in time to save his life. However, as clever as Abe no Yasuchika had been, it was not enough to save the emperor. Tamamo no Mai had devoured too much from him in her time as his concubine, and he continued to sicken until he finally died. It was his son, in fury, who sent out the search party for her to avenge his father. The fox was found in the Tochigi prefecture near the town of Nazi, and a man named Miura no Suke killed it. It was an inglorious ending to a horror story. She was shot through the heart with an arrow as she fled, and her body, which had charmed 3 kings, was left to rot on a barren hillside. It wasn't a great battle. There were no real heroes to the tale. There wasn't even a song to be sung about it. What's more, there was no reason. Tamamo's motive for setting this chain of events was never uncovered. She came, she attacked, and she was eventually killed. But her stories, her reasons, and her past are a complete unknown. She dies as strangely as she lives in her own story. But that's not the end. Tamamo no Mai's resentment was so strong that rather than decay, her body became a stone, one that was said to be surrounded by barren ground, where nothing would ever grow, and the corpses of any small animal or insect that was so foolish as to come near it. Because according to the stories, everything that touched the stone died instantly. That is where the name Seishaseki, or the Killing Stone, came from. It was featured in writings of such famous poets as Myuu Bajo in his record of his travels, and it was of course observed from a safe distance. Tamamo no Mai's story is a famous one. It has been adapted into no drama, novels, and television. The character has found her way into video games, manga, anime, and all forms of entertainment. The question is, why does it? And why does Tamamo herself hold on so long? There are plenty of stories about foxes in Japan and China. Some are helpful, like the mother of Abe no Seme, who could be considered the Merlin of Japan. Most are neutral. They play pranks, they punish. They mostly just live. They're seen as part of the landscape of this world. Kitsune, foxes, or fox spirits, there was never a clear distinction between them, are just part of the landscape. They live there alongside humanity. They would play their pranks and might trick a person, but their antics usually weren't considered deadly. Yet, this story stands out. Maybe it's the fear of the unknown. After all, Tamamo no Mai came out of nowhere with no clear motive. Maybe she was working for someone. Maybe she just enjoyed what she did. That was likely the most frightening thing about her. Humans like things they can define. We like to know, for sure, why or how things were done. And when something defies that, we are unsettled. Tamamo, in her story, caused the death of thousands. There's no clear reason. She was as inhuman as her motives as she was in her species. And that puzzle keeps drawing us back to her. The funny thing is that at the same time, the legend still hasn't ended. It hasn't ended with her death, or even the horror of a stone that kills all living things around it. It would be easier to write her off if it was. It would just be another story about a wicked seductress who got what she deserved and left a reminder of her cruelty. Rather, hundreds of years after the story, a certain Buddhist monk named Geno came to the stone. He knew something of the history, but understandably was disturbed at the lack of life around the stone. So he prayed and was confronted by the spirit of Tamamo no Mai. At first she was angry, very angry. She still resented her death and hated the humans who caused it. But Geno, apparently, was a very persistent man. He begged her to let go of her grudge and listen to her tale. As time went on and the story continued, Tamamo apparently began to repent her anger. And when he asked again, she consented to the stone to be purified. And after that, she was allowed to re-enter the cycle of rebirth and no longer trouble the land of the living. While the stone would forever be seen as deadly, perhaps just because of what the Japanese considered noxious gases around it, Tamamo herself no longer haunted it. Her vengeance, her grudge was gone. She leaves her story as much of an unknown as she entered it. We still never understand the reasons, and she never really offered a solution. She came, caused her pain, regrets, and vanishes. Maybe that's the haunting thing about the story. We want to understand Tamamo, and we never will. Now, it's easy to write off the legend of Tamamo no Mae as nothing more than mere folklore. After all, we know better than to think that a stone can kill someone if you get anywhere near it. We know better than to think that foxes can turn into women, or that a mirror can reveal someone's true nature. Evil stones, foxes, motiveless evils that leave so many dead. They can't be anything more than a scary story to tell in the dark nights. Maybe to give some moral lesson. Maybe just to scare us. I'd like to tell you that it is. However, the Seishoseki, the killing stone, still exists to this day. And to this day, nothing grows nearby.